Well, hello, creatives community and kind folks out there. Welcome to the channel RPG with DBJ. I am your host, and of course, I am surrounded by the best, the brightest, the most creative individuals in the RPG community who are now taking place in this live broadcast. Now, this week, we decided to talk about twins. For those who don't know, this channel is broadcast simultaneously over Twitch, YouTube, and Discord, both audio and visual. So if you just look down below, many, if not all, of our current broadcasting links, you may take part in them live or join in, sometime later on. So we decided to take the subject of twins as our subject for this week. And on World Building Wednesday, we decided that whatever subject we're talking about, it would be kind of weird. Hey, Cameron, what's going on? Everyone, we take the subject, no matter how bizarre it is, or strange, or maybe even seemingly unfitting, and on World Building Wednesday, we build a world where that subject has dominated the landscape, both physically and narratively in the landscape. And so we are going to take the position and build ourselves a world based on the idea of twins. Now, of course, when we talk about twinning anything, we normally relate it to humanity, human beings, people born as twins, fraternal, biological. We talked about cloning, and mind you, in the Discord, there's a link to, if you go to TV Tropes, .com, you can find a ton of tropes that have to deal with twins, everything from separated at birth and magical twins and people who just happen to look identical, etc., etc., etc. Now, I feel like we can take twinning, the duplication of anything, and turn the volume up to 11 by not just having it involve individuals, but have it involve the landscape and the place where we're located. And I'm thinking literally taking the idea of twin cities. We do have a place here in the States, twin cities. I'm sure there are many of those around the world. And taking that and literally making twin cities. I suppose you can go even further and maybe pull from something utilized in a lot of science fiction, and even fantasy as well, where you might even have a twin world, maybe a thin barrier between worlds where it's like a alternate timeline, or through the looking glass kind of thing, where you look through a mirror and there are equal and opposite individuals on the other side. I believe it was used as during the television show Fringe, using like bleeding edge technology, fringe technology. They were able to find other timelines and travel from one to another. Of course, I suppose if you want to flow into time travel, this does work as well. But yeah, I loved I love the Fringe show, and it really it pushed the barriers quite a bit. Some of it was a little bit bizarre, but because it was a television show, it's kind of cool to look at like alternate histories of our own world, but looking at it in real time. Like, you might see monuments or statues or locations where things are spelt differently, colors are different, that kind of stuff. So I'm thinking, let's go a little bit more mundane and just make twin cities. And why would we have two cities most likely separated by by a waterway, river, maybe some other geological or function of the environment has separated the cities, maybe due to an earthquake or a major crevice or something like that. But both sides of the city are nearly identical in layout. Uh, yeah, and thank you, Dead Man, for of course popping into the Discord. The Twin Cities. Yeah, Twin Cities are a special case of two cities or urban centers that are founded in close geographic proximity and then grow into each other over time, losing most of their mutual buffer zone. There are no precise criteria for twin cityhood, but to be considered twin cities, and it goes on talking about twin cities. Rickard says, world building with twins and thinking outside the box, the premise of the movie The One. Yeah, what a great action movie too. But in the movie The One, there's this idea that there are multiple timelines, and if one were to kill, it, it didn't really go into a lot of detail, but essentially, if you murder one of yourselves in another timeline, you become more powerful. You absorb, I'm presuming, some of their psychic potential, meaning like your thought processes, your speed and endurance increases, so on and so forth. So, historically, maybe these twin cities were created on purpose. Maybe there's an individual or even something as powerful as a divinity or like a gold dragon or silver dragon or something using a location as an experiment to create a city where you have the equals on either side and equal and opposite. Quite a terrible kind of eugenics experiment, but maybe one deposits things that allow the people to live in peace and harmony and justice and great law, while the other one's thrown into some kind of chaos. Crime, it might be enhanced or allowed to fester, maybe disease and famine or something of that nature. With two cities very close together, those things wouldn't necessarily be black and white on either side, but that could be one reason it was created. Maybe the cities were founded, maybe they were emptied out and they were founded over a couple of generations as people moved to a safe haven that just happens to have a city that has, equal and opposite buildings, which in some ways might lead people to feel like like two Twix. Maybe some people feel that one side's better than the other, although there's no measurable way to say that one is better than the other. Um, twin throne rooms, twin noble houses, those kind of things. Like if you're the nobility, which side do you sit on? And then does like a criminal element take over the other city's noble landscape or something? I mean, that might be a strangeism in this kind of community. And of course, maybe there's something that bleeds over into the population where twins are. It is more common than not that twins are born um, in this location, or maybe there's something even further that somehow draws an individual that happens to look and act just like you from a distant land, even though both individuals are not related to each other, which could be another strangeism as well. Or a side effect of tapping into arcane power creates an equal and opposite effect. If you were to summon, for example, if you were to summon a ball of fire into your hand, that somewhere in the other city there is an orb of ice cold that exists somewhere else, or it is generated or opens a portal. That might be a little too strangely complicated, but that might be an idea as well. If you create heat, you make the other place colder by an equal amount somewhere else, or maybe even in the exact same location you're standing. So if you cast a fireball in left city, then there's like it's like it becomes frigidly cold in right city or something. Um, or unless you start a fire in the other city and the other people there are like, "What the hell, dude? Like, what did you just? Did that pyromancer cast another spell? We need to shut that person down. He's burning down our city or setting fires in our city, and we don't know about it." Yeah, Rickard goes on to say two cities founded to control the wild magic energies that was left over after some cataclysmic event. As long as the cities are in balance, with each other's energies, it will be kept in check. But if they diverge too far from each other, the cataclysmic event might occur again. Ooh, wow. Okay, so much maybe in classic Dungeons and Dragons, there is the prime material plane, which essentially is made up of all of the other planes of existence, including for those that are old grognards like myself, even all the alignments had their own planes of existence. And so maybe these cities are like a confluence of the balance that all of the other planes and energies of existence exist. And so maybe there are periods of time, um, a holiday, a cultural event to align each everything from city to city. So you could have like these proctors or soldiers or secret police or something that go around with like a type of sage or scholars and I don't know black wow blueprint individuals, kind of like feng shui ish, to ensure that people are in balance on each side, and you could get like fined and or you could be punished, forced to align or something like that. Yeah, Rickard goes on to say, so twins being especially good to separate between the cities as they balance each other out perfectly. Right, and imagine if your twin is going out of balance with you, and you now mind you, both twins living in either city, they don't have any ability to communicate or whatever, but maybe the authorities go after you because one of you is out of balance and both you and your twin must remain in balance. So maybe you decide to join a paladin's order, and your twin decides to join a criminal organization, and the city proctors are like, we don't care what you do, but both of you guys need to make a decision and figure out what you're going to do because you're really diverging. Whereas maybe a person who becomes a fighter and another one becomes a ranger isn't much of a divergence, but one becoming a barbarian and the other one becoming a wizard is a huge divergence, right? I don't know. That's getting a little too into the weeds, but I like this idea. Um, a continuation: a fire in one city might cause the other city to raise an area. Oh, to raise an area to keep the balance if they can't get the fire in control fast enough. Ooh, so they might have to a house fire where, let's say, a number of people, there may be a small business on the first floor, maybe it's a few stories tall, they have a family living there, it catches fire and they're unable to put it out. All of a sudden you see these proctors go over to the other city and they go, well, I'm just coming up with we have 16 days to knock your building to the ground because the building on the other side burned down. And the people living there, mind you, many of them being the twins in the other city, are going, is that what happened? I can't believe this. Why are we being kicked out of our homes? And the business person are just like, yep, we're just gonna have to knock it down. That's pretty interesting in a very weird metaphysical way, which of course would draw in the player characters into things that they have nothing to do with. I mean, imagine the authorities going up to a player character saying, we're going to have to arrest you because your twin committed a crime, and because both of you are out of balance. Maybe the way to get into balance is to one of the ways to circumvent the rules are for the twins to get into some kind of confrontation, which would automatically seem like as a player character advances in their skills and abilities, that their twin, in some kind of very strange, tangential, symbiotic or sympathetic connection, that their twin also is advancing as they are in whatever manner. And this may also draw the players into having to return to the city more often than most player characters do, right? Like, you can leave for a fortnight, but you gotta come back. You know, every person that leaves the city comes back at some point to reunite with their twinned their I don't know, twin individual or something. Great plot between some madmen wanting to recreate the event, so they try to cause catastrophic imbalance between the cities where the PCs have to try and stop them. So, ooh, a madman could, like a criminal or something, could create something, an imbalance in one city, and try to recreate that same the the events that led to the imbalance, thereby creating the balance back again, which might make the authorities decide to leave the situation alone? Hmm. Pyromancer burns down a building. There's a warning going up that the building on the other side needs to get burned down. Pyromancer goes to second to the other city to essentially burn down that building, but maybe there's something important inside of it that they need to enact their particular goals, which might mean that a city of twins, maybe very few things can be done one at a time. Like most rituals have to be either done simultaneously, or magic items are basically twinned items, meaning like an an enchanted medallion on one side communicates with a medallion on the other city, or a blade that is created in one blacksmith's place that's enchanted with magic must also be created in the other city with the blacksmith. Yeah, Tesla's like, some men just want to watch the world burn. And some men also want to watch the world burn yet again. That's pretty. I'm liking this, because now I identical things happening. You could play around with the identicality of it. For example, like a celestial and the fiend being equal and opposite on either sides of the city, but knowing that they are somehow keeping either city in balance, but they hate each other, so they're sending agents after each other to stop a thing. Hmm. I don't know. Rickard says, and to build on the fire thing, an explosion kills a lot of people in one city while the balance is heavily strained. Do you risk taking the time to move people from the other city to the one that had the explosion, or do you take more drastic measures? I hear where you're going. Yeah, do the proctors murder the people or set them on fire, burning them in the streets to maintain the balance? Especially if, well, you mentioned wild magic, but what if that wild magic has a personality to it? It is it is intelligent. They are beings from another world. They could, much like the mob, right? It's like we've given you enough warnings. We're going to have to step in, and maybe the city is pushed to the point where, pulling people out to the street or forcing them to stay in the building and burning it down while they are alive inside might be the choice to make before these outer world beings, individuals, powers, or whatever step into our world to. It's like, if you don't make the decision, we'll make the decision for you. You know, which maybe there's a renewal for the city. So while some people are eliminated, maybe these great powers from outside will go, fine, we're going to snap our fingers and randomly remove people from both sides of the city to reintegrate something into the city, which is how the city renews itself. Although quite drastically and deadly. Cameron says twins gaining each other's abilities could be a cool reason for a Gestalt campaign, like a whole party of twins leveling as their twins as NPCs level in other classes would make a good backup party too. I like that. The paladin goes down in your group, so the party goes over to the other city to get the the equal and opposite paladin, and they see him dressed in like black clothing and armor, and he's got like a blade and stuff, and they're like, "Yeah, I was waiting for you guys to come after me." And everyone's like, "I don't like this guy's personality. I wish we had the old one. I don't like the new blend." Right? I mean, it's like a built-in. This could be like you said, Cameron. This could be an exceptionally cool built-in world-building thing where you have equal and opposite NPCs, which could act as both allies and adversaries and backup characters all at the same time, living in twin cities for this particular reason, right? Got player character's druid gets killed, they go and go get the other druid, but now the temporarily replaced new druid has to figure out, may only have a limited amount of time to stay with that party until they can find either how do you renew how would you redo the destruction? The loss of life or loss of buildings. I wonder how you would do that. Maybe there's an adventure for the parties to go get the twinned MacGuffins to bring them back to the city. Like literally kidnapping someone because they happen to look and act and seem like someone that needs their twinned individual back in the city. You know, hey, you um you fit the description. You're coming back with us, and the ogre is like, oh, like, yeah, you're coming with us, dude. You're gonna live on the outskirts, and the troll's no idea, like, oh man. Ricker says, I can imagine waking up every day to see a rift in the sky with elder beings trying to claw their way into our world. The only thing keeping them in check is that we maintain balance. I I, I like that, especially if you can kind of reskin or reflavor like natural weather events. Like imagine a storm, but lightning bolts arc out of both of them. They're like twin lightning bolts that strike outside the city and the clouds. That image you get when you take a mirror and you have the mirror in the sky or your body or something, so you have the mirror over your face. It could be like that, where you see something clawing through to get to both sides. I'm liking that a lot. It goes on to say, I would imagine lots of warlocks for the elder being trying to destroy the balance for their patron in exchange for their powers. And let's not forget, if you're a warlock on one side of the city, there's an equal and opposite warlock on the other side of the city, maybe trying to do the same thing. So how do you gain more favor than your twinned counterpart in the other city, huh? What's that about? Um, Red Dice Diary says you could play on the old idea of fairy fetches if it comes to twins, a created being designed to replace the kidnapped original. Yeah, okay. In my head, I'm wondering what's a good way to replace the divergencies, right? So, of course, you could have the authorities specifically coming in to balance everything out. But if you're an outsider, you could kidnap, replace, steal something by having a a duplicate replace the person or object or being that you're trying to remove from the city, which might be its own underground thing. Like crim crime might be easily detected because the other city that did not suffer that crime might have some way of understanding that there's something going on in the other city. So in order for a person to leave this somewhat like built-in domination, you have to make a pact with doppelgangers. Maybe there's an underground doppelganger with pet mimics, um, kind of illusionist kind of individuals that are there who replace you so you can get the hell out of there, and even for just a short amount of time, to then come back and have this person who took your place go on and be hired to take someone else's place. So maybe doppelgangers are a necessary release valve. Like they're not evil, they just happen to be necessary to maintain psychological balance because people just can't take it anymore. Um, yeah, Ricker says that's some Lothian scheme right there. Both warlocks trying to create imbalance, but as they are in different cities, they actually keep the balance because they fight each other. Yeah, the everyone's folding their arms like, let's just see what the warlocks do with this thing, right? And I love that as a player. That's an easy like angsty player confrontation kind of thing because maybe a particular player character's warlock patron is like doesn't grant them the spell they want, and the player character's like, I know who did it, damn it, oh, my twin in the other city, I'm gonna go beat some ass. You know, because they know what happened. Or the player character, every time they do something to improve themselves, they know, if not now, sometime soon, their counterpart will keep up with them. And the only way to get ahead of them is to to gain this advantage and then hurry up and do a thing to try to keep their balanced counterpart from gaining that particular advantage. But then, how do you hide it from the system? Ooh, I don't know. I don't know. I'm thinking there would be a. I'm thinking like with the weather events, they could that could be the a visual method of telling the time that's happening. So maybe the weather gets worse. There are storms and wind and rain and heat waves and cold, much more chaotic. One day there's a major blizzard that dumps snow, and there's ice and hail flowing sideways, and the very next day there's like a heat wave, and then the next day there's like the third day there's torrential storms, and you can see like it's not just bolts of lightning, but you see like eyes, and it's not just winds, but like the wind literally like shears buildings like that looks like claw marks or something, and that could be the visual representation of a timer going off. Red Dice that says that a diary says I think there's an episode of the old series Sliders. I remember that series, where the dimension jump device develops a fault and they end up stealing one from a parallel timeline and leaving their own cruddy one in its place. Yeah, the wind between worlds. I like that. I like the idea where maybe the separation of the cities. Okay, here's a weird thing. The separations of the cities becomes greater when they start to diverge, which also physically represents the rift between the two cities. So when everything is in balance, it looks like a very calm river. You can sail across it. Maybe there are barges and maybe even sailing ships and rowboats and things. It's pretty calm and it's sunny. But as the rift develops, the river gets wider. Maybe the river starts to turn into literally a rift in the ground, like a crevice or a crag, and some of the buildings on the edge start falling away, and it becomes harder to get to the other side of the city to re-engage the balance in the first place. So the player characters could be almost physically trapped on one side of a city before the other, or need to hurry up and get across the crevice before the cities yet again start to separate like a big earthquake, and a crag starts separating the two. But when things become imbalanced, it's like an opposite effect where the cities start moving together, the water level rises, it's not rapids and high winds, and so it looks like it's going the opposite of what we would see through time and space. I'm liking this. Cameron says I created an organization in my new superhero campaign called Cuttlefish that has a Lothinian system which has ensured its survivals for centuries. Which this is a strange talking about this twin world. This is a strange way where organizations will more likely than not self-police them. There's more self-moderation and control than it would be from an outside source. Like twin criminal organizations might be more inclined to eliminate their own adversaries, their own the people who cause the most chaotic disruptions, because they know that it's not just about them. It's about the survival of the city. It's about the survival of their own criminal organization. It's about keeping the authorities away from them laying the smackdown, right? That could be why this city has remained in not in balance, but in existence for such a long time, because unlike regular society, maybe there's twice as many people working twice as hard to create the balance that is necessary for the cities to exist in the first place. Kind of a strange thing, but yeah. Ricker says a crime organization would probably try and be the only crime organization in both cities. I'm thinking that too, right? Like it's a weird dichotomy of one in each city. Let's assume there's three criminal factions, so multiply that times two, so now you have six. But in each city they are trying to eliminate their competition in their own city to become the one that dominates, so that when they dominate their one city, it means that the confrontation still going on in the other city is now at a disadvantage because the black sabers that's in left Twix has succeeded in eliminating their enemies, which means the black sabers, or I don't know, the white blades in right Twix now have the upper hand because they are further in balance than the other organizations, right? That's it's funky thinking about that, but I'm liking it. I'm liking it a lot. Ricker goes on to say the only way to grow is to own both sides so you can grow as much as you want. Yeah, making sure or make now this leads to a really cool complication where it's not even about where you're at, but ensuring whatever allies you have on the other side are you are in bolstering the other side while you're doing your thing. And of course, you're probably having a ton of conflict and or compromises and communication with people who are your twins on the other side, your twin relatives and uncles and aunts and things, which leads to something else I'm about to talk about. Red Dice says in the Fate RPG, in one of their Fate Worlds books, did a mini setting where corporations were trying to manipulate timelines to advantage themselves. That was pretty interesting, and that may be the thing, right? Like, not only do you have to worry about your criminal organization on the left side, but you now must, to succeed, you must give some of your resources to the right side city, the east side versus west side. You're on the west side, you have to give resources to your east side counterpart to ensure that you are in balance. Otherwise, no matter what great level you become on your side, if there isn't one balanced on the other side, it's not going to work. Cameron says, I think if there was one twin in each twin city that people would have reason to work in tandem with the other side, it would be one of the few things they do for each other. Yeah, exactly. If you're an example would be, if you, let's say you fall in hard times, take a simple individual, loses their home, loses their job, has problems with their loved one, and they are an average individual who's they, whatever the case may be, their husband, wife, children, or whatever. Maybe it benefits that individual who falls on hard times to go to the other city to beseech their twin to say, hey, listen, I'm not doing really well. Something happened. Not doing very well. And so your twin counterpart who's doing very well in their relationship and job and whatnot, it almost behooves them to grant you some kind of benefits. Here's some money. Here's a contact on my side I think you need to talk to, because when you're out of balance, maybe there's something more subtle. Maybe there's more karma. Maybe there's more karma than dogma between people. Someone breaks their leg on one side of the city. That means there's a greater chance you're probably going to suffer an injury on your side of the city. And it's not like one person gets punched in the face on one side of the city and the other person gets a black eye instantly. Maybe there's more of a subtle woven nature to it, and player characters are closer to the center of the web, and so maybe they are able to like the I suffer harm, you suffer harm as well kind of thing, because they're closer related to how the tendrils of fate linked together. Red Dice continues to say, I don't know. I think people would still find a way to fall out with their own doppelganger. Maybe I'm just a pessimist. Communicating with your doppelganger has its own issues, right? Like, holding secrets from your doppelganger might not be a good thing. But at the same time, the relationship you have with your doppelganger, the giving of secrets, the expectation that your doppelganger will one day find out what you're up to, even if it's a subtle manipulation of your doppelganger and your doppelganger with you, now there's an automatic weak link in your life. For example, if you're a criminal, there's automatically a weak link of an equal and opposite criminal in the other city who could be captured, tortured, and get that particular information out of them while you're in the other city, which might mean that there's a lot of twins working together, knowing that for short amount of times, and what short could be measured in hours, days, weeks, months, that the two twins work together, but then they have to go back to where they came from. That's a weird limitation as well. A powerful wizard knowing that their counterpart could be vulnerable to attack or something. I don't know. It's weird. Red Dice says, I could see people not liking it. After all, what if there's a version of you in this alternate world that made some choices you didn't have the courage or ability to do, and thus has a better standard of life? Damn, that would sting. Yeah. Question. You have an identical twin in another world. Is it cheating? Is it theft if you steal something from their life? Is it wrong if you exchange yourself with your counterpart and take over their much better life? What if you have a falling out with your particular loved one who goes to search out your twin in the other city to alleviate something? Follow. I know this has nothing to do with role playing, but imagine you have a dispute about child rearing with your significant other, and you decide to go to the other city to make that thing happen that you wanted because the twin on the other city didn't want that thing to happen. And then you come back and find out that maybe your loved one is pregnant or that you impregnated your other loved one in the other city. God, that's not maybe. While we don't think of that mechanically, there's a lot of role playing fodder in this. There's a lot of it, especially if there is an extended period of time that you're able to utilize. Maybe there's a countdown clock that increases every time you have these interactions. So your average individual, a year, 6 months, nobody really cares if you're going back and forth across each city and you're diverging a little bit. But each time you do it, maybe that countdown clock goes from 6 months to 6 weeks. And then maybe it goes down from 6 weeks to 6 days. And then it goes from 6 days to 6 hours. Like there's almost like maybe there's even a physical representation of this. Someone's wearing something in a bracelet or a medallion or something that changes colors, or maybe there's like everyone wears like a five-pointed pendant or something, and there's three of the pendants have turned black, and the other two points of the pendant are white marble or some kind of gemstone, and someone looks at you like, you need to go back home. Leave the bar, stop drinking, go back home, because sooner or later the authorities are going to come. Something's going to happen to you and your counterpart, right? That might be a way for other people to sense that. Or maybe there's a physical change in like eye color, hair color, body, something like that. A Red Dice Diaries goes on to say, I could see an interesting scenario where the person who is poor and has no money somehow makes their way to the other city to steal the life of his more successful doppelganger. But at the same time, the doppelganger hates their job and the restrictions of their life and has gone to the original city planning to take over the poor version's life. And what a cool, weird way to double up the number of NPCs in your world, yet change the interaction you have in that world. Player characters go into the tavern, very happy tavern owner, gives them drink and food. Hey, how you doing? I'm thinking about expanding. I love my life. PCs go on an adventure. They come back. They go, hey, I don't know, Gregorio, how are you doing? Gregorio's like, ugh, not too good. Life sucks. I hate being trapped in this place. what, serving drinks all day. What am I, a servant or something? And PCs are like, is this the original Gregorio, or did they switch places? Right? And mind you, this could be nefarious, meaning one person does it without the knowledge of the other one, or this could be a quid pro quo. Two people meeting on the bridge. Maybe there are bridges that span the cities that expand and contract for whatever reason. Magically, maybe they mechanically spread and stuff. And that's where you meet. There are these like twin, like these locations where everyone just happens to meet their counterpart in the halfway spot. And or maybe there are locations in each city that are just known for spires, alleyways, whatever. Everyone knows that that's where you meet someone, and it's like an open secret. Everyone knows you go to these places to have a talk with your doppelganger, and maybe it's a quid pro quo. Hey, we're going to meet back here in a week. You do your thing, I do my thing. All right, let's go. Yeah. Rickard says building on the Rift and Elder Beings cumulative, a strong balance. I see where you're going. Okay, so strong balance mean you can hardly see the rift on a cloudless day. Ooh. Medium balance means you can clearly see it during the day. A weak balance would be the rift glows like auroras during the night. And I wonder if that's personal or open to the public, right? It's possible maybe the rifts are a personal viewing thing as well as being something available to everyone else. So anyway, Ricka goes on to say a weak imbalance means you can see movement in the rift. A medium imbalance means you can hear the whispers from the rift, and a strong imbalance, spawn of the elder beings fall from the rift like falling stars. And that would be pretty interesting if the imbalance is something that is personal, so that when when those spawn fall from the sky, they run the streets running after the people who are imbalanced. And mind you, in each city, there are victims in both cities who may not understand why they're victims, but there's others who are like hiding away, like basically praying that they're not going to be victims of this great imbalance as it brings the world back together, the twin worlds back together again or something. I can see this being very environmental, right? It affects the whole city. Everyone's running for cover I love Displacer Beasts, but I'm just using them as a physical manifestation of Displacer Beasts running through the cities, both cities. And also it could be very personal, where maybe one loved one is trying to lock their other loved one outside because they know they've been duped by their doppelganger or something. And the husband's like, I know we've been having this affair, but you have to go back. I need my original wife back. You're like, but I am your wife. I'm just like her. He's locking the doors as you hear screams in the background or something. Red Dice says, non-Euclidean bridges built from the bones of elder gods and the angles of time. Ooh. So the elder beings are just as vulnerable to the imbalance as humanity. And if the imbalance lasts too long and they are unable to reestablish the balance, they die. So the city is not as mundane as people think. Maybe the city has been built on the bones of these elder godlings, and so maybe some of the structures and materials and even some of the things that could be found on either city are where a lot of the power comes from. So it's not just magic generally, but maybe they're able to find like the crystalline brain matter of one of these creatures and using that to power their own powers. And it's kind of making this very strange circular logic where we, the people living in the Twin Cities, gain more power to allow us to become imbalanced, which causes the powers of imbalance to come into our world, who then we are now able to defend ourselves against them, causing more of a rift, causing their deaths, knowing that in order to keep them away, we have to reestablish balance to keep them out, which might create kind of a magical economy. The further the rifts open, sure, those beings might come here, and their deaths and the power they bring with them, maybe they are able to shred the weave that makes more power available, which means that keeping the cities together limits who has access to that power. So it's in our best interest, not only from external violence, but internal scheming and machinations and who has the power to do what. So that's weird. Red Dice says I can see it being a bit like Dark City. Yeah, Dark City, where it looks normal, but the more you delve beneath it, you find it's an alien engineered environment. Um, get some of that Cthulhu neo noir vibe going. I'm loving that as well. Yeah. Cameron even says it's a cool way to do a Prince and the Pauper. I'm loving the Prince and the Pauper idea, going back to someone is rich and someone else is poor, or someone else has a it's grass is greener idea, right? The rich person doesn't like to be trapped in their predictable world with arranged marriage, but the poor person wants to be in the rich, but they have more freedom, so you're able to switch to each side. Yeah, I'm liking the Prince and Pauper idea. Cameron also says, what if the balance of this place dictated the power balance of the rest of the universe? That's what I'm saying. Like, with this elder gods thing, maybe the people who live in these cities have more influence than people think. From the outside, we think, "Oh my God, these creatures are coming after us. These intelligent beings are leading I don't know, like a horde of monsters to destroy us." But at the same time, more and more people are realizing, wait a minute, they need us like we need them. And they need us to be here. Otherwise, the rift might open completely and they're completely lost. Or the rifts to their magic comes into our world, draining from them their capabilities. I don't know. Red Dice says maybe the reason the Elder Gods are trying to get in is because they're pissed that one of their kind was killed by the imbalance, and mortals now have the tenacity to use the bones of, excuse me, of one of their kind to make the bridge. Ooh, yeah, one of the Elder Gods fell, and from their bones created this twin city. I'm okay. I know this is a little bit too much on the nose, but imagine seen from above, the city looks like two halves of a human brain. The left side, right side brain kind of thing. That'd be kind of cool. I love the despite what was it? It was made in '98. I'm thinking the special effects for that movie still hold up with the city that would shift at a certain period of time. Yeah. City of the Mind. I love it. Yeah. Cthulhu's fallen and he Cthulhu's fallen and I can't get up. But maybe okay. The city is built from above if you look at it like a human brain, but if you look at it from the side, it still looks like a human brain, meaning the subterranean portions of the world look like a spinal column. It's narrow. There's a medulla oblongata at the back of the brain that leads down into a spinal column-like underworld where each spinal C2, C3, C7 section of the spine is a deeper portion of the underworld of this darkened Cthulhuoid being, and maybe it's not just a brain, but you see leading away from the brain are tendrils of the city reaching out in parity to each other, like tendrils of tentacles. But those tentacles are parts of the city proper that reach out like fingers, but seen from above. Man, Red Dice says it just crashed a steamboat full of explosives into him. It worked in the novel. Yeah. That'd be pretty bad, though. Tesla Ranger says, I just can't picture something as powerful as an elder god dying from just tripping and falling. Yeah. Sorry. Maybe that's the weakness, right? That's the that's we never knew that Cthulhu just had a hard time standing up, right? Brittle bones and all. But yeah, yeah, I'm liking this a lot, and unfortunately, maybe the other elder gods, like, okay, I know we're going down some really weird paths here, but maybe the city itself has some arcane power to it that, like, for example, the doppelgangers that exist in this world, some of them true stat blocked doppelgangers, others just human beings that just happen to have twins. Maybe much like our brain has like neurons firing in it, maybe there are locations in and around the city that are like nodes of power that most of the very important people have captured: criminal organizations, nobles, authorities, um, law enforcement. I'm trying to think of some other craftspeople or something, and they're able to use those nodes for their own capabilities. Maybe they have increased ability to surveil the neighborhood, or reskinning the stat blocks of other creatures. Maybe there's a criminal organization where members of that organization are able to transform into humanoid faced monsters that exist in our monster manuals, like manticores and sphinxes and naga or something. Like, just because they have possession of that node, they are able to draw upon the madness of this elder god that fell down to the world, and this gives them their capabilities. And I think, this could blend in some adversaries. Instead of like adventuring outside, it's more like adventuring inside the city as a brain itself, basically a city that can almost never be completely understood because it's always moving, thinking, drawing in people, a quid pro quo of drawing in madness while it's also maddening you, or those that are insane and mad are drawn to the city for some reason, or their madness becomes manifest as well, and of course being duplicated in the other city in some way, shape, or form. Red Dice says, what if the old one died, but that is not dead, but that is not dead that cannot die, and the old one's consciousness seeped into the city. Perhaps the city is now a living thing. In essence, it's the old one with bones of concrete and arteries of tarmac. Oh, hell yeah. Oh, hell yeah. And, for example, the city, maybe even people who've lived in the city their entire lives, can get lost down back alleys if they just travel, if they wander too far or delve too deeply, they get lost. And it's only their doppelganger counterpart allows them to lead themselves back into commonality. Or much like the human brain, where we know that certain thoughts are in certain locations, maybe we just transplant that to this three-dimensional city where artistic artistry is in one side of the brain, so that's where the arts are done, and phobias are in another side of the brain, and that's where that's done. And the pieces of the brain where we don't know what's happening are the mysterious locations. They're so maze-like that if you go there, literally the streets move, steps are created where there were none, walls move in. You open a door and go into a building, turn around, and the door's now gone. And now you have to exit the place down an alleyway that was straight, but when you look back, now you see the alleyway has split into a T and moved on. And maybe this is much like three-dimensional. You could walk across a bridge that leads over a small river tributary, but then when you look back, the bridge has now receded back into the land, so now you can't go back again. Maybe there are like there are canals, much like Venice. There are canals in and around the city with walkways above you, and there are individuals, much like Karen the boatman, that are able to that you must hire to go through these canals and pathways, which are like neurons in the brain, knowing that it's very dangerous to go back and forth. Um, Slaj, so I'm gonna call you Slaj there if you don't mind. It says, "Hey, just joined. Inception would be nothing if we had worlds made out of brains consciousness. Fantastic worlds indeed. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Inception, perfect example of that. With maybe magic isn't so much us summoning magic and doing a thing, but it is transforming using the power of the city to do what we want to have a thing happen. So, hold person isn't me hypnotizing you or paralyzing you or wrapping you around something. Maybe hold person is shaping the city where bars flow around your body or chains reach out from the ceiling and the walls, or magic missile isn't so much me shooting a blast out of my hands, but it is things, you know, exploding, much like the scene in this Inception where they're sitting at the cafe and you see the land and the ground and the fruit stands explode. Maybe it's more of the power to shape the city itself, which would be a strange thing. Oh, what dreams may come, and God, that movie is excellent. And if for no other reason than the cinematography of that, yeah, yeah. Red Dice Diary says the idea. Perhaps the city is the subconscious dreams of the old one. The idea of transforming the world using the power of your mind reminds me of the vision of heaven from the world where dreams may come. That's a great movie. If you ever wanted to do a dreamscape movie, I mean, sorry, dreamscape game, that is a movie to really draw from. That Dark City. There's a ton of others. Inception. I, we could go on and on about that, but so that this isn't so chaotic that it's completely unrelatable, maybe that's the reason why we need a doppelganger in the other city, because they create the stability that we need to navigate the city in the first place, right? Much like I know I'm pulling something really strange out of my ass here, but Pacific Rim, uh, they you needed two individuals to drift between each other, to cascade, because it requires two minds to establish the psychic power necessary, the to control the robots for whatever reason it was, right, for that particular thing. Maybe it requires a minimum of two members of humanity to maintain some kind of balance. So, in other words, yes, parts of the city twist and shape and twist like Inception, like what dreams may come, but those locations are stable because of us. So again, not only is it necessary for us to have a doppelganger to prevent power from the outside, maybe it's just so that the city doesn't just keep changing on you moment by moment, right? As the rift separates, so too does our conception of the city. So sure, in the bowels of the city, there's a whole giant forest and glade, and maybe in the underworld they have their own sun, and it's like twisted and weird, almost like levels of different dimensions. But the only reason they're stable is because we keep it stable. Otherwise, micro worlds might create and destroy and collapse upon each other. Or maybe you find bits and pieces of your own subconscious down in the city. And that's where we get our adversaries from, right? The only reason there's a pit fiend is because it comes out of your mind. That'd be a great origin for a lot of these monsters and stuff as well. Slosh says that could be a nice like quest, plot, or story. A council that holds a city together with their minds, like mind flayers, maybe. But someone murdered one, and now the balance is in chaos. Yes, Lodge, we've. I suggest that you go back. By the way, this is also being broadcast on Twitch, YouTube and our Discord server each day, Monday through Friday. So you can go back and check that out. But yeah, what a great way to incorporate mind flayers in the city as approachable NPCs, right? Even if they are vile and disgusting and the city has like a dark, extremely dark bent to it, maybe they are necessary, or the player characters could even be agents of the mind flayers, much like like the Guardians from Green Lantern or something, right? Like there's this council of individuals, the mind flayers being some of them or even all of them, that are like, listen, you know, I know you don't like us, and we really don't like you guys, but we need to work together on this thing because one day, somehow, maybe in the future, maybe in a thousand years, we'll figure out how to bring the Elder One back. But for the time being, you live here. We need you to keep this brain in check, or otherwise, the rest of your world is harmed. Ooh, the only reason the PCs even are here tolerating the destruction and nastiness and the vileness is because they know if it's not for them, this is going the tendrils of the city will grow and envelop the world. So so the apocalypse has already happened in the Twin Cities, and they know it. The people who live here know it, and they stay here because if it's not for them doing their part, it's just going to expand to the rest of the world. And maybe on the outskirts of the city, there's almost like refugees, um, shanty towns being built up in and around it, almost as if it is building up like the spread out from the brain of the city, like the growing body of the elder god itself. But it's all made out of like shanty towns and refugees and people coming here to, for any reason, like for they've got divine visions. They're looking here for money. They want to reunite with their loved one. They are greedy. They are sadistic. Hey, there's twins in either city. That means that I can have my way. You know, I've got enough cash to be with twins anytime I want to. Or so, you know what I mean? A fascination with it. Groups on the outside that are trying to get the people that live in the city to leave the city, to let the natural growth happen. That it's not up to us to maintain the world, but the gods themselves, or something like that. Like I could see that as well. Um, Red Dice Diary says, I think personally I'd have mind flayers as the antibodies of this city old one. Ooh, they track down and eliminate people who have been delving too deeply into the secrets of the city, like the trench coat wearing guys from Dark City. I like that. That makes a great tagline. You ask me about the apocalypse, we're living in it. Yeah, yeah. You might think you've got away with what you've done, but the city remembers. Ooh, the city remembers. So the people who have the lost people who created the rifts are creating more and more of the rifts never leave. They still remain. They could remain as ghosts. They could remain as etchings in walls. They remain as dream-like entities repeating their last actions over and over again. Anyone who dies in this world, in the city, doesn't leave. Their spirit remains, or evidence of what they've done remains. Like someone has kept such deep secrets that now they're literally growing in the city. Now there are literally tombs with convoluted stairs and secret doors that are a physical manifestation of the lies and deceptions that they've kept the nowhere people. Ooh, I like it. Man, their secrets are locked away, and other people that come into the city to unlock secrets of those that have passed are letting these horrors out into the city. So the mind flayers, maybe I know mind flayers and beholders don't get along, but I'm just picturing inscrutable things floating around the city: eyeballs, beholders, mind flayers, aboleths. Like, come on, let's just come up with some like floaty, very dangerous floaty things that patrol the city in inscrutable kind of manners. Meaning, like, you could be sitting at an outdoor cafe and three mind flayers surrounded by four floating eyeballs looking at people just happens to float by, and it's just a normal thing. They look at someone passing by and they stop to question them, and instead of hearing words, you see their like shaking and their eyes are wide, and you see sweat pouring down their head, and they're like ah, and then all of a sudden the mind flayers instantly turn away and stop and keep moving on. And everyone's like, what the hell? And no one goes to help them up as like blood runs down their nose and out of their ears or something. Yeah. Deadman says there's the Gythian or Gythian from Guns, Love, and Tentacles, the second DLC for Borderlands 3. The heart still beats, the heart still bleeds. Yeah, I'm liking this a lot because if the city remembers everything, imagine the PCs. Let's take your average boring ass encounter. PCs fighting goblinoids, right? And I'm including like trolls and ogres and stuff like that. Okay, so city street, they're accosted by trolls or something like that, or some bugbears. PCs fight the bugbears, slay them, kill them, whatever. They move on. PCs move on. They don't even they barely even remember this thing happening. Okay? 2-3 sessions later, they come back, and standing in the street are like shadowy figures that are the creatures they killed before, doing and acting exactly the way that they happened before when they killed them. And the PCs are like, are they undead? What are they? Shadows? Are they? What are they? And mind you, instead of just using pure undead, maybe, just maybe, it's more than just the undead. Maybe there are other things here. Elementals, fiends, celestials, oozes. Pick anything that you want, and maybe those are how the dead come back into the city. Someone who has been like a vile liar and thief and cutthroat, you know, adult language, adult themes here, pedophile, rapist or something. Maybe when they die, they become a gibbering mouther or gibbering mouther, depending on your pronunciation. Maybe they become the oozes of the city. They are literally lower than a snake's belly, right? They live down in there, and maybe, just maybe, they are. You can even communicate with them in a bizarre kind of manner, right? Maybe, despite them being the lowest of the low, they still have some rudimentary part of their psychology, or the doppelgangers that are killed come back much like evolution. They come back as the lowest of the low, only to, through some weird mechanism, become a greater portion of themselves. And ooze ends up drying up and sitting in a corner, and then breaking out of that dried up ooze comes a goblin or a kobold, and then out of that goblin, out comes the goblin, and then the goblin goes around, and maybe over time the goblin starts having growths on its body, and it curls up in a corner, and now it busts out of there and becomes an orc or a hobgoblin. And then as that hobgoblin moves around, maybe the hobgoblin over a period of time has growths or something, and gets a shell around it, and then it becomes an ogre or a troll. And maybe this is like the lifespan to try to, in a strange kind of way, regain their old self or their old life or something. Maybe I took that a little too far. But anyway, guys, excellent world building. Cameron's like, hey, I like oozes. Don't ruin them like that. Yeah, you know what? I like oozes too. I love reskinning some oozes. People, religious people in towns disrobing from their white bleached robes with a bemused smile on their face as they drink just a little drop of something black or orange or gray or whatever, or gelatinous, that they drip into their mouths, surrounding the people in a small town square, to then regain the balance of the city. As we know, there's nothing worse than being imbalanced, right? And then their smile turns to pains of agony as the ooze does a chest burster and rips from their bodies and spills out of their eyes and mouths and nose to to go after the population that's in the city square and whatnot. Yeah, I love oozes. Sorry, little side note there. But anyway, guys, thank you very much for helping me world build on this world building Wednesday. It's this is great fun. By the way, just so you know, the Monster Monday stream shat the bed, so it there was some shade left around. Apologize for that. So Monster Monday will be taking place this Saturday. I know that might send you guys on a little bit of a weird like what, but hey, we're talking about Twin Cities here as a theme for this week, so maybe there might be some disjointed conversations. But anyway, guys, thank you very much for participating in this thing. Tomorrow is Third Pillar Thursday, the third pillar of exploration. Please join me there. That's my own little special niche kind of a thing. So guys, everyone have a great one. I'll see you later. Bye. Thank you for watching.